figure out for this team what exactly they are and where they're heading. No mas. We don't need 7 or 8 games. 8-3 to the injured Florida Panthers is your answer. That's the answer, very clearly and loudly spoken to the general manager. You made this mess. You assembled this team. This is on you. It's not on the players. It's not on the coach, which I believe is one reason why he's been reticent to make the coaching change, which I think everyone would assume at some point will be happening. He also didn't commit to keeping Andrew Brunette through the season when asked about it. This is a 4-alarm fire in Nashville. And I've spoken for weeks now about the toxic energy that has surrounded this team. There is no team in the NHL with worse vibes internally than the Nashville Predators. Everyone from top to bottom is beaten down. The vets, how could they possibly be this bad? How could this team, with some of the superstar talent that they have, guys who are really accomplished players in the NHL, turn around and play as poorly as they have? It's excuse after excuse, and it's not good enough, and it's not changing. And that's the tough part for the Preds to have to swallow, is they made this huge gamble. They were in the middle of a rebuild. It was like they had whiplash, Kate. That's how quickly their neck snapped. Because I remember a few years ago sitting with Barry Trotz, Hall of Fame weekend, November, in Toronto, and him saying, hey, we've got 3 to 5 years of pain to try and figure this out. That same season, they go on to win 15 straight games. They make the playoffs on the back of that 15-game winning streak, and somehow they decided at that moment in time, we're going to go sign expensive vets. And we lost in the first round to the Vancouver Canucks. But you know what? We are a team that can transcend and become a Stanley Cup contender. No mas. They tried it, didn't work, and now what?
Right. And I wonder what it was he was hoping to see in that 7 to 8 games, because he's seeing the same thing over and over again.
We're 100 games in. We're more than 100 games into this sample size of this team with this core, with this coach.
Right. So now what? The question is, who can he move? You mentioned those expensive contracts, not easy to move vets who have not performed, not just last season, but into this season as well. They're not playing up to what he had hoped they would bring to this team. So where do you go? What is a realistic situation for Barry Trotz in terms of who he might actually be able to move, and what does he get back for that?
Look, there's lots of different ways to do this, but you see the stats on the board. UC Saros, 5 goals allowed, .688 save percentage. He's in the first year of an 8-year deal. Steven Stamkos isn't scoring. He's on an $8 million a year deal. I personally believe right now you're not getting any value for Steven Stamkos. I don't even know if you can get someone to take on that contract without eating some money. Personally, that's my opinion. I don't think teams have been calling. The guy that I'd look to move first is Jonathan Marchessault. I think somewhere in there he can be rebooted and be a strong contributor at a pretty reasonable cap hit for a team that's looking to contend and add to their top 6. If you really want to rip the Band-Aid off, we're having a conversation about Philip Forsberg. But again, the big part of this puzzle for the Preds, and then we'll talk about them in a second, the Vancouver Canucks, is a lot of these guys have full control and say. You're not moving Philip Forsberg unless he tells you where he wants to go. And he might give you one team. He might say, I'm not moving at all. So that's a huge part of the equation, that not only are the cap hits on the wrong side of the ledger in terms of equity, but the control that you don't have makes moving players off of this roster incredibly difficult, even if you are highly motivated to make a change, which Barry Trotz saying we need 7 to 8 more games to figure out. I don't know what those 7 or 8 games are going to tell us that the first 110 haven't, but here we are.
Here we are. And you mentioned the Vancouver Canucks. And the one interesting thing that you and I and Craig Button talked about yesterday was he felt that there are a lot of veteran players that are probably looking around feeling like the fans are feeling. Can they win with this team? So perhaps there's a little leverage there in the sense that some of these veteran guys want to move. And speaking of veterans, this is where the Vancouver Canucks come into the fold, because it's been noted that they are willing to move veterans. They're 30th in the NHL. They are not playing the way that they had hoped for this season to turn things around and find themselves back in the playoffs. So Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford taking calls. Now, the first question that comes to mind when the word veteran is thrown around is it going to be Quinn Hughes? At this point, it's sounding like he's not on the table, but some of the other guys that we could be seeing, Evander Kane, David Kampf, Kiefer Sherwood, what do you think the move is for the Canucks if they're looking to get a little younger here?
Well, let's back up a second. The development is on Monday. The Canucks sent a memo, a message, a note to the other 31 teams signaling this change. This is a pretty big departure from a relative normal course of business. And we've seen how this has kind of changed or evolved over the last year. I think Sunday was the anniversary of the New York Rangers and Chris Drury sending a similar message, which specifically mentioned Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, both of whom no longer play in New York, and sent the New York Rangers season on a death spiral. So this note that was delivered to general managers was very similar in tone to the one that Doug Armstrong sent out earlier this season, and also one, believe it or not, that wasn't really reported on, that Bill Guerin sent out from the Minnesota Wild saying, hey, I'm open to a shakeup here. I'm willing to make some changes. Now, when it comes to the Canucks and what they're looking for, they're looking to move vets. And so that's the part that you touched on, and that's the important part here. But then the next question is, given the control that a lot of these vets have, half the team has a no move or no trade, who is it that we're actually talking about here? It's not Filip Hronek. It's not Quinn Hughes, as you mentioned. They want to build around Quinn Hughes, not trade Quinn Hughes. And it's obviously not Elias Pettersson. So what group of players are we talking about? Brock Besser has the full no move. Jake DeBrusk has the no move. Evander Kane has a modified no trade, and he's home in Vancouver. So Philip Heedle's hurt. I mean, who in the end, as we go through this forward group with David Kampf, a guy who spent most of this season in the AHL as your second line center, who are you trading away from this team unless someone's coming to you and raising their hand to then go out and move on from these players in exchange for the supposed player of 25 and under that they're looking toward?
So is it Kiefer Sherwood that's at the top of the list that they could get something in return for that would benefit them in the future?
I would have to think that there's huge value in Kiefer Sherwood. I mean, first off, he's been a force. I know people look at that in relative terms and say, okay, 16 points in 23 games, Frank, that's some hyperbole. I'm not being funny. I don't know where the Canucks are this season without Kiefer Sherwood. The guy just works. Right. He competes and he scores. So he's been a total breath of fresh air. If you were to, post a poster child in the Vancouver Canucks locker room of, out kicking your skill, exceeding your skill and just doing it by pure work ethic. I mean, Kiefer Sherwood is the guy. He hits anything that moves. And so I would have to think that if you're the Canucks, you're going, wait a second. There's a lot of value here, but that's what we need. We need more of that, not less of it. Nonetheless, I think the real point and story here is that the Canucks have apparently, not all that different than some other teams in the league, have seen that what we have assembled, given this year of transition without JT Miller, their inability to go out and land a second line center or even a third line center, they see the writing on the wall that this is not getting any better and that they have to make some important decisions now and for the future to change the outlook of this team.
One last question for you on this topic. I know that they've mentioned Quinn Hughes not on the table. If you are in Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford's seat here, at what point do you start to consider a big offer to move Quinn Hughes?
Well, I think you have to first have a conversation with Quinn Hughes and his representatives. I don't think you just willy-nilly, consider an offer. Of course, teams are going to be calling, but I think sometime over this holiday season, call it somewhere between now and Christmas, so that you can chart a path moving forward in 2026. Hey, Quinn, how are you feeling about what's happening here? Here is our plan as we see it. Here's the outline of how this team can be competitive. And here's why we need you to be the centerpiece of it. Have that conversation to get a sense. He might not outwardly say one way or the other, but his words can give you some indication, or his tone, his body language, his posture, all those things that you take and you kind of roll up into a ball and figure out, okay, what's the read on this? Is Quinn Hughes, when it's time to re-sign, does he want to be a Vancouver Canuck? And if you have any trepidation, if you have any concern about the answer of that being no, anything short of a strong commitment, I think that's when you need to begin having conversations around the rest of the league just to take the temperature. I don't think you have to do it before the deadline, but at some point between January 1st and theoretically the draft, you'd have to think that that's the window that you want to do your investigative work during the trade deadline period, and then understand fully and completely what the marketplace looks like for Quinn Hughes in the summer before ultimately trying to decide and chart this path forward. I think in an ideal world, everyone's getting ahead of their skis. The Canucks want this guy on an 8-year deal to be the centerpiece of the team. And that's the MO, the assumption that they're going to run on really until they have a sense otherwise.
All right. But the bottom line is the phones are open. They are taking calls and looking around at what's available and what moves they could make. Well, Frank, if we flip over to the East, some welcome news for the Ottawa Senators is that they're likely to have Brady Tkachuk back in the lineup sooner rather than later, according to Travis Green. Of course, he got hurt on October 13th. He had 3 points in 3 games. But hey, I think the biggest story with this one is how well the Ottawa Senators have fared without him. 10-5-4 in that time. That's not too bad, but I'm sure they're excited to have a jolt with such an impact player back in the lineup.
Yeah, and Brady Tkachuk, as Bruce Garriock noted, trending toward a return on Friday, Black Friday for the Sens, which would be as you mentioned, a welcome boost. But a little trivia question for you.
Uh-oh.
Can you name the one Canadian team that's in a playoff spot today?
It's the Winnipeg Jets. It's the Ottawa Senators. They're third in the Atlantic. They're in the mix.
Correct. So it's one Canadian team that has sort of met expectations so far to this point. Everyone else has huge question marks. The Leafs at the bottom of the East. You just mentioned the Jets. Connor Hellebuck out 4 to 6 weeks. The Oilers have been scuffling. We just ran through the gamut with the Canucks. The Flames are at the bottom of the West with the Preds. I mean, it's the Montreal Canadiens have fallen on hard times after leading the Atlantic Division. It's been an absolute mess just about everywhere. And the Sens, meanwhile, they're just steady on the rudder. Not every night has been pretty, but more often than not, they work, they compete, and they found a consistent level to play at under Travis Green that night after night has been repeatable. And doing it all without Brady Tkachuk has been really rather impressive. So now you get him back, and all of a sudden, can they take off? Can they, in short order, catch the Tampa Bay Lightning and be leading the Atlantic Division? I really don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility.
Absolutely. And I think about the power play and what he injects into that and the way that he's been able to lead off the ice. There's been a lot of talk about the impact that he's had in this short amount of time. So you've got to think that the Ottawa Senators know what's in front of them. And I think a big key for them here is to not take the foot off the gas just because he's made his return. But Frank, another team that has been good lately is the Washington Capitals. They're 4-1 in their last 5 games, and they got off to a pretty steady start to the season, but it feels like they're picking up steam. What have you seen from them that's impressed you, especially on this recent stretch?
Well, they were defending really well to start the year, and that has been the one constant under Spencer Carberry, and obviously with Logan Thompson in net, they've gotten the goaltending. But they have scored a lot more of late, and that's been a big reason why they seem to be turning the corner here. They're getting back to, and it kind of coincides with Alex Ovechkin getting back on the score sheet. He's certainly been part of it, but he's not alone, because I want to call your attention to Jakob Chychrun and just how ridiculous of a bender this guy has been on. 21 points in 23 games, but 8 goals so far for Jakob Chychrun. You multiply that by 4, and this is a guy on a 30-goal pace as a defenseman. Now, Chychrun, believe it or not, as a guy who has once scored 16 goals, I think in 53 or 58 games previously when he was in Arizona, and blasted more than 20 last year, it's like a written goal on a note card that Jakob Chychrun, his own personal goal, wants to become a 30-goal scorer as a defenseman. So he has been ferocious on the puck, as aggressive as could be at that blue line for the Caps, which has been huge. And that blast has been really impressive. So I'm looking at what Jakob Chychrun is contributing to the Caps offense and this lineup, and it's next level. So he's having a fantastic year. I don't know that we've talked enough about him league wide. And as mentioned, if the Caps could figure out, with this offense going and this defense going, if they could figure out some version of their special teams, neither one has been good. I mean, you're talking about a team that is going to be north of 105 into the 110 point category again this season, when a lot of us, myself included, were expecting a bit of a drop off. I'm really liking the way the Caps are trending right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned special teams, Spencer Carberry shaking up things, especially on the power play. What do you think's been the biggest issue there to get them going?
I mean, probably some of the same things that the Caps power play has run into a little bit over the years, a little bit of static movement or lack of movement, because a lot of people know what's coming, what it's building toward with Alex Ovechkin, but they've obviously swapped him and out of units. And that part has been an interesting development this season. They've tried some different formations. I think it's probably due for a breakthrough. But look, this Caps team, this was going to be a fascinating year for them, because they've got so many young players in their prospect pipeline, and Steven Ellis has been raving about their system. He's going to join us here in a minute. They've got guys knocking on the door. So if those guys that had huge breakthrough seasons last year, I'm talking about McMichael and Alexei Protas and that whole crew, if they can continue to climb, and then the next guys behind them are going to come in and hand the baton off from Alex Ovechkin and John Carlson and that group to the younger guys, like, the Caps are not going to experience any drop off. And if you want to think about just how good that Caps offense has been of late, the Caps are on pace at this exact moment in time. Again, it's one quarter, it's pace, but they're on pace to have 5 different 80-point scorers. At least according to my research, the last team that had 5 80-point scorers in one season, you have to go way back to the high-scoring 1980s, and that would be the 1985-86 Edmonton Oilers. I'm not predicting that it's going to happen, because, again, you're talking about Jakob Chychrun being one of those 80-point-plus guys, but I don't think it's crazy outside of the realm of possibility.
Absolutely. Well, staying on the Caps, I want to ask you about a trade that raised some eyebrows at the time, but it looks like it's paying some dividends here for the Caps, with Justin Sourdif and the way that he seems to be getting into a rhythm. 4 points in 4 games. He's got the nod from the coach as a player that he likes in terms of his work ethic and what he's been able to do. But what stands out to you about his play at this point?
Well, I think first off, just this trade, June 26, 2025, kind of out of the clear blue sky. Remember, the Panthers are just coming off their second straight Stanley Cup win. Sourdif did not participate at all, had played 4 total games for the Panthers over a 2-year span. And the Washington Capitals pro scouting staff identified him as someone who could be a fit moving forward. Just for reference on how significant of a price that they paid to get Justin Sourdif, it's really not all that different than what the Flyers paid to get Trevor Zegras. So you could look back and say, hey, maybe a bit of an overpay here by the Caps. But what are also the odds that a late second round pick would be a contributor in your NHL lineup at all, let alone the impact that Sourdif has made for the Caps to this point. And don't take my word for it. Just read what Spencer Carberry had to say, because he's been all over it, saying it's been so impressive to see his progression inside of our organization, going from fourth line wing and a little bit of third line center, then going into the role that he is way up into the top six. He has just continued to get better. He was excellent tonight, and it feels like he doesn't get tired at all. It's probably one of the best qualities about him is his engine. He can just go and go and go and doesn't drop off. That's, a hard line, hard edge coach who has non-negotiables with the highest of high praise for a guy that I don't think was really on anyone's radar at all to come in and be this impactful, let alone for what was given up for him.
Yeah, kudos to the scouting staff for seeing something in him that they felt would be a good fit and a good long-term play for the Washington Capitals. Well, you mentioned Steven Ellis, so this is a great time to bring him into the conversation. He's a prospect analyst for the Daily Faceoff and our WHL insider here on Victory Plus. We've got some great things to talk about. Steven, you've got a busy week because the CHL USA Prospect Challenge, which is on Victory Plus starting tonight, is happening. So I know you're locked in on that. And I want to ask you off the top, there's a lot of names that we'll be seeing that we could be hearing about in the upcoming NHL draft. So if I put you on the spot here, can you give us 3 names on the CHL side that we should be watching that we could be seeing later in the season at the draft?
Yeah, so let's start with Ethan Belchet's a guy that I've mentioned a couple times on this show, and it's because he's this 6'5" monster that just puts up a ton of points. He's so dangerous wherever he shoots from. I'd say his pace still needs a bit of work, but if he can figure out how to be just a bit quicker, he's going to be so difficult to contain, given he's about 230 pounds, 6'5", and likes to use his frame whenever he can. Then there's Chase Reed, who, I'm not kidding when I say some people think he could be the best prospect in this year's draft. Now, I'm not going to put him that high yet, but the way that he's playing right now with the Greyhounds, I've watched him a lot. Like, this guy is extremely smart. Like, you're starting to see some of what Matthew Schaefer showed with his hockey sense around the same time last year. And it was this showcase event that he kind of cemented himself as the top prospect. So I don't think Chase Reed is going to be number one, but there's a lot of people who think he should go in the top 3. And because of that hockey sense, he's got a good frame at 6'2". He's very mobile. You put that all together, there's a lot of love. And then there's Xavier Villeneuve. You see the point totals as a defenseman in QMJHL. Watching him the last couple of years, yeah, he's small. He's 5'10", but he makes up for it with his incredible mobility. He's always like a one-man breakout there. He feels like a 4 forward at all times. So he will drop easy smaller, but I feel like a showcase event like this, he's going to show that, there's a reason I've been so productive at every level. It's because I know what I'm doing. And with a showcase like this is something where, with so many other good defensemen, I think he can shine.
Yeah, I can't wait for the CHL USA Prospect Challenge. It kicks off tonight in Calgary at 8 p.m. and then the series shifts to Lethbridge on Wednesday, also at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can catch those games right here on Victory Plus, streaming globally. In Canada, it's on TSN, but in the U.S. and worldwide, those games are going to be right here on the Victory Plus app. And Steven, when you think about the U.S. side of this, and I'm kind of bracing myself as an American because it might be a little bit of a lopsided night for a U.S. NTDP program that at the 17-year-olds is not as strong as it typically is. But when you look at that group and as you mentioned, this is really kind of an early preview to the 2026 draft. There's 16 A-rated prospects playing in these 2 games. So essentially at least half of the first round is going to be playing in these 2 games. Which US NTDP players are you most interested in watching?
So the reality is, I don't think any of the American players are going to go, at least on the NTDP, because there are Americans on the CHL roster. I don't think any of them are going to go in the first round. But the guys with the best shots starts with Bearchild, and I talked to Harrison Bottiger, who will be one of the goalies for the CHL. He said Bearchild's underrated, great shot, so smart, very keen to see that with U.S. playing at this recent in Slovakia, where he was one of the better players in that tournament. Then look at Casey, who's I guess the best way of putting it, he's like a tough son of a what to go against. Like he just wants to get down. His brother's a San Jose Sharks prospect, so there's some good hockey love in there. I think when you look at how this series evolved last year, Muchrin plays that type of game that when everyone's trying to kill each other, he's very effective. So I like him. And then if you're looking for a fence player, Victor Plant, his brother Max, his other brother Zam, they're two of the top players in the NCAA right now. I feel like we're going to talk about Victor being kind of in a similar role in the next couple of years. Great playmaker, does a good job of rushing the puck out. And you look at him, he's playing at just under a point per game, which is not easy on this year's NTDP program. So I'd say those are the three guys most scouts would be keeping a close eye on.
Steven, I want to ask you about the opportunity to raise your stock. We're going to see some guys, as you mentioned, on display, showcasing in this small sample size what they're capable of doing. Is there anyone that you anticipate would take this opportunity to really push their stock up and climb up the board that we should keep our eye on?
Well, my answer would have been Brooks Rogowski out of Oshawa, but he is injured, so he will not be participating in this event, unfortunately. But you look at this guy; he's a 6'6" monster. He's so tough to contain in front of the net. But the guy I'm going to go actually with here is Chase Harrington, and that's just because we actually talked about him recently in the WHL show about how this guy's not a play driver, but he complements everyone out there. He could play with anybody. He's plays with Spokane. He can play up in the top six, play in the bottom six. He does a really good job of retrieving the puck, chasing after players. He's got some speed, and he's also just really strong defensively. So you put that all together, yeah, he's not flashy. He's not going to put up the points that someone like Mathis Preston's going to do on the same team, but he's going to be someone that teams look for and say, yeah, I could see him as a first-round pick because he does things coaches want, and it's that hard work ethic. It's going out there and winning every single battle. Those are guys that you really look for late in the first round, early in the second round, because they're the floor. The ceiling might not be high, but the floor definitely is.
Okay, Steven, your connection has been a little choppy. I'm just going to see if you can close your window and join us again, and I'll rag the puck for a second until you come right back. All right, so Steven's going to reboot, and we're going to have him join us again so we can fix that tech issue. But Kate, one of the really interesting parts about this CHL USA Prospect Challenge is that obviously with a handful of teams that play in the CHL that are US based, you also have players that have changed, over the last calendar year, affiliation. Some guys that actually participated in this game last year on the US side and now are playing particularly in the CHL and are part of this game. So there are 4 Americans, as we bring Steven back in here to join the conversation. There are 4 Americans that are playing in this CHL USA Prospect Challenge that are on the CHL side. Steven, when you think about how much this landscape has changed over the last calendar year, like, does this game sort of speak to that directly, that these guys can take a different path and still end up not just on the radar, but the development path of their choosing to get to where they ultimately want to get to?
Yeah, and I hope my connection stays strong here. Not sure what's going on there, but this opens up new opportunities where someone like JP Hurlbert he was in the USHL last year with the NTDP. He would have been playing for the NTDP had he stuck there in this game, but going over and getting a lot more time and playing on a more competitive team has really opened up some new opportunities for him. And then you look at Chase Reed. He was a guy that was playing in the NAHL last year. Like, we're not talking about him as a potential top 5 pick if it wasn't for the opening, allowing him to come play in the OHL and be a big part of the Greyhounds roster. And with Harrison Bottiger, it was something where he was part of a 3-string goalie situation last year. He didn't get to play as many games as someone like Trey Augustine would have a couple years ago. And I think him going there and being really important for Kelowna has now made him a potential late first-round pick, early second-round pick. So I think, and if Klepov was another one where good year in the USHL, extremely valuable right now for Saginaw, where they don't have Michael Misa. He's been able to be very important kind of in his play. So this is something where these guys could all still go the college route. I expect a few of them still to do that. But now they're getting an opportunity to play in front of more scouts and play in showcase events like this. I think this has been a good opportunity.
Steven, I want to ask you about a guy we've been talking quite a bit about over the last week is Jesper Wallstedt and his performance with the Minnesota Wild. And I want to ask you about his journey here because we watched his stock fall a little bit, and then all of a sudden he's broken into the NHL, particularly in the last few games, and really made a statement about himself as a player and what he's been able to do. So talk a little bit about his journey to this point and how you've seen him evolve into what we've seen most recently.
Yeah, like it was not long ago that we were talking about him being as like the undisputed top goalie prospect in the NHL. But then guys like Dustin Wolf and Yaroslav Askov kind of really took over. Last year was this opportunity where it's like, all right, let's see what you can do in the AHL. And he was at times the third best goalie in Iowa behind Samuel Lavi and Dylan Ferguson, a veteran. So that was a little bit concerning. And then you see that they give Philip Gustafsson a deal when it felt like Wallstedt was the goalie of the future. This was the year where if he was going to prove he could be a long-term NHL threat, he was going to have to make it happen right now. And you look at the numbers this year, 6-0-2, obviously. He's been so good. And it's been good to see him rebound because I've seen interviews where he was really hard on himself last year. He knew he needed to be so much better and that there was so much hype around him, whether it be what he's done internationally, what he did in back home in Sweden. Like he scored a goal in like one of his first games playing at U20 competition. Like this guy has been hyped up for years. He's finally starting to make it work, and Minnesota's long-term goaltending looks really good. So shout out to Wallstedt for figuring it out, because you look at any goalie prospect board, a lot of people were really sour on him after last year, and he's kind of won everyone back over.
Yeah, Wild fans are definitely not sour on him at this point in the season. He's been absolutely lights out for the Minnesota Wild. Well, as Frank mentioned, you can watch the CHL USA Prospect Challenge on Victory Plus if you're in the US and worldwide. And you can catch the first game tonight from Calgary at 8 o'clock Eastern. And tomorrow things shift to Lethbridge, also that one at 8 o'clock Eastern. Steven Ellis, prospect analyst for the Daily Faceoff and our WHL insider, always bringing some great insight. Thanks, Steven, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks so much.
All right, Frank. Well, it was a few weeks ago that we talked about Canada's jerseys for the Olympics, but now I want to ask you what the grade is on France's jerseys. A bit of a different look than the Canadian ones.
I'm going to go F, not for France, but for failure. What are we looking at here? I mean, I look, I've been to France a handful of times. I don't know that this speaks to the country. Are those elbow numbers? What are we doing? What are these lines? Did we copy them from one of those marble copybooks to make these like, I couldn't imagine for one of the true fashion capitals of the world also playing Olympic Games in the fashion capital of the world to be represented like this with this. What is this? These would have been better without the lines if you just left it completely plain and it just said France with a swoosh. I mean,
yeah, too busy.
Galaxy brain. Like it's that gif of the guy whose head is Steve Jobs in the Milky Way. Like, I'm sorry, I don't get it. I want to get it. I want to like it. I want to understand high fashion. I want to be a sartorial expert. I don't know what this is.
I mean, I think you emphasize the point so clearly in that, you know, you think of France, you think of Paris and the high fashion as well as in Italy. And this is extreme low fashion. I agree with you. I give them an F as well. And really that's the perfect segue from low fashion to high fashion for our social segment today, because as we talked off the top of the show,
opposite. By the way, like it should be like France should be high fashion and Nashville lower. Not
Nashville low, but not in this case. We talked about it off the top of the show, the Preds falling to the Florida Panthers, but there was a group that was really high on the Florida Panthers and they did it in high style. So people come to Nashville, they think of going to Broadway, but there's a lot more to it. And some of that is getting a quality pair of boots or a hat. And I have to say 10 out of 10 for the Florida Panthers dads who were on the trip, because they went into Rustler Hat Co. They custom designed their own hats. And if you take a look at the behind the scenes of this, they were working with the team at Rustler to come up with a design. There you've got them in the store. They can brand their hat. They can add feathers. They can add all sorts of accessories. They've got the Carhartt vests. They really leaned into the full trend. The little hat tip there is a nice touch. But they design fabulous hats. And look at this. Look good, feel good, play good, or watch good in this case. And they were arriving in style. And of course, they got the opportunity to cheer their sons on to an 8-3 win over the Nashville Predators. So they leaned in, and I think they get an A grade from me. I don't know what you're thinking, Frank, but I've got them with an A.
A plus. Look at the custom Florida Panthers Carhartt vests with the gold logo to match the vest. I mean, chef's kiss. Like that is beautifully done. So, well, yeah, look, hey, the Florida Panthers on the ice are the NHL's gold standard. Apparently, I mean, and if you're going to pick a place to go for a dad's trip, or a mom's trip, Nashville's a pretty good one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think this all around, well done.
I think they nailed it. All right. Well, when we look at the play of the day, there's only one game tonight on the NHL schedule. So where should people be putting their money when it comes to the Stars and the Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah, I ain't scared. One game, it's okay. We're good with that. I'm going to go Stars Oilers over 6. And part of the reason for that is you've got the Oilers returning home after a tough trip in which they've been kind of roundly blasted in their own marketplace, and deservedly so at times for their play. They appear to kind of be turning the corner a little bit. They've got 6 of their next 7 at home. This is the embarkation of that homestand. And these two teams met 3 weeks ago, earlier in the month of November in Dallas. That game was a 4-3 final in OT, so over 7 as well. So the Stars have been firing on all cylinders. I think you're rooting for goals tonight, unless you're an Oiler fan, because that typically means that Stuart Skinner and or Cal Pickard haven't been very good. But I'm going to go over 6, in part because those guys haven't been very good, and feeling all right if we can get back over 6 units so far, plus 5.4 right now for the season.
All right, climbing your way back up to the top. Well, we talked about Daryl Razor Ray a week or two ago, playing a game in his broadcast, throwing in some words. But Frank, it's a lost art. It is a word.
Is
words
it?
of poets. These guys are so good. The action is happening so fast, and the way they find different words.
It's amazing. It's amazing how well and how quickly they think on their feet. But Kate, I mean, even like for someone who is like, I don't know, my wife would say borderline Tourette's. I just randomly say stuff. This is the next something, because I mean, it's impressive, but I don't really know what it is. Take a listen.
It's an art.
Right off the glass, like we've seen in Nashville. Goofy back. Turnover. Nielsen holds and looks and shoots. Saved by Knight. Shot by McCarr. He scores. Cale Makar. What an incredible shot off the post and in. Well, paint my reindeer and call me a goblin.
What was that? Well, pay my reindeer and call me a goblin. Okay. Look, I'm all for fun. That is incredibly fun. I don't know what just happened, but I'm here for it.
You got to mix it up. It's an 82-game season, and there's lots going on the broadcast. Yeah, I don't know how to digest that one, but
shout out to the crew at Altitude TV, because they definitely have fun with it. They do not take themselves too seriously, and in a way, kind of Mike Lang-esque, if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins and his call. He had so many great lines that have been etched in Pittsburgh Penguins history and quite literally echo through Pittsburgh. So, hey, whatever it takes, whatever gets the job done, whatever gets people excited.
It's a long season, and hey, we're talking about it, and we will remember that call for sure. All right, we'll be right back here with you on Wednesday morning to talk all things around the NHL. Thanks for watching on X, on YouTube, and here on the Victory Plus app as well. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 Central. Thanks for watching.